Welcome to Archeon. Let's start with a message, one that reaches us from deep in the past. It's a simple declaration, really. I was here. It's such a powerful statement of presence. But the thing is, for most of our history, we were nothing special. For millions of years, humans were just these insignificant animals. We had about as much impact on the world as, say, a jellyfish or a firefly. Yeah, we were stuck right in the middle of the food chain. We lived in constant fear of predators, hunting whatever small creatures we could find and, well, mostly scavenging the leftovers from more powerful hunters. And all of that leads to a kind of secret, one we've almost repressed. We tend to think of ourselves as the only humans, but that's a really recent development. And honestly, it's a pretty peculiar state of affairs. So the big question is, were we always alone like this? Not at all. The truth is, for most of human history, the world was actually home to several different human species living right alongside each other. Yeah, our family was, well, it was large and really diverse. We had siblings who were adapted for the cold, others for tropical jungles, and even some who lived on these tiny, remote islands. If you could go back 100,000 years, you'd find a planet with at least 6 different species of man walking around. So our situation now, our solitude, that's the exception, not the rule. That's what's actually strange here. And yet, even with all that diversity, all these different human species shared one defining trait, an extraordinarily large brain. But having a brain this big, well, it's a huge drain on our resources. Oh, for sure. It consumes a quarter of our body's entire energy supply, just when it's at rest. That is an absolutely enormous biological cost. And that cost had to be paid from somewhere, right? So we ended up diverting energy from our muscles to our minds. It's such a fascinating trade-off when you think about it. I mean, a chimpanzee could never win an argument with a human, but it could easily rip on apart. And that wasn't the only price we paid. Just walking upright created this terrible dilemma for our species. It really did. See, our hips had to get narrower so we could walk efficiently, but at the same time, our brains, and by extension, our babies' heads were getting bigger and bigger. It made childbirth uniquely hazardous for humans. So evolution's solution was for our infants to be born, well, prematurely, utterly helpless. And that very helplessness had this profound consequence. It meant that it really does take a tribe to raise a human. That constant need for help is what favored the evolution of our incredibly strong social bond. But there was another huge step that helped us climb the food chain, something that was a real game changer, the domestication of fire. I mean, think about it. Fire gave us warmth, it gave us light, it was a weapon against predators. But the absolute best thing it did for us, it was cooking. And that one single act, cooking our food, it fundamentally changed our entire biology. Right, because when food is cooked, our intestines don't have to work nearly as hard to digest it. So over generations, they could actually shrink. And a lot of people think there's a direct link here. The less energy your body spends on digestion, the more energy it can divert somewhere else. More energy for that big brain, for thought. Which, of course, brings us right back to that crowded family tree we were talking about. Yeah, if we weren't alone, then what on earth happened to everyone else? Well, for a long time, there were 2 main competing theories. The first one is basically a story of attraction and mingling. As sapiens spread out, they just merged with the other human populations. And the second theory is much darker. It's a story of revulsion, of competition, maybe even genocide. That's the replacement theory. And for decades, that replacement theory was the dominant one. It just seemed to make the most sense to people. But then, a massive 4-year project to map the Neanderthal genome revealed a pretty stunning truth, one that was hidden away in ancient bones. So, what was this stunning truth? What did they find? They found that a significant portion of modern humans, people living right now, carry the genetic signature of the Neanderthals. And it wasn't just Neanderthal DNA they found. Nope. In other populations, they found the genetic ghost of another lost relative, the Denisovans. So the reality seems to be this more complex middle ground. It obviously wasn't a total merger of populations, but it wasn't a complete replacement either. It looks like a few rare encounters were enough to leave a permanent mark on our DNA. Still, even with that nuance, the larger pattern is, well, it's hard to ignore. Exactly. Whether we were directly to blame or not, the fact is, as soon as Homo sapiens arrived in a new location, the native human population there went extinct. And being the last human species standing for the last 10,000 years, that has profoundly shaped how we see ourselves. It's created this huge chasm between us and the rest of the animal kingdom. It makes it so much easier for us to imagine that we're somehow special, the very epitome of creation. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we still shared this planet with Neanderthals, or any of our other siblings, would we still see ourselves as this creature apart? Or is that the very reason they had to vanish in the first place?